If you are transactional as a partner and you're just responding to quotes, ticking over, you're not taking the time to understand them and actually help them and make them feel like you're involved in their job and they couldn't do their job without you, you can be replaced by AI. A key trait of sales leaders and salespeople should be accountability. I think you have to be a bit bold. Even if you don't work with them at that point, you have a vision and go, I want to be their go-to partner. You might be able to wing it, but that will show. And eventually you will drop the ball on something that you know you're not good at.
Today's kind of theme for the podcast is I want to talk about AI, but I want to talk about how do salespeople adapt to the new world. And when I think about you and your colleagues in those sessions that we ran, what you guys embodied was the ability to change and to adapt. And you had this mindset that was just super high agency, impressive. You were challenging, but also like just like seizing the opportunity to do stuff differently. So I want today's podcast, I want anybody watching this to come out of this going, right, here's some practical steps that I can take because we do have a new world on our hands.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of hype
changing
around AI.
Very quickly, isn't it? So,
changing very quickly. But look, Matt, introduce yourself to everyone first,
so
mate.
look, I'm Matt Pennell. I'm one of the sales managers at a company called Cisilion. We specialize in networking, collaboration, Microsoft, and Cisco being our real core strategic partnerships. So, I've been doing this for about 12, 13 years. And like I said, we met our past employer when I was just doing sales, and now I've moved into sales leadership. But you were somebody who had a big impact on my career as an external coach. I think there's a lot of the time you talk and listen to people internally, but having somebody with that outside neutral view can make a big impact. And I still use some of the things that we learned to this day. So that's me. But good to see you again, Ben.
No, that's great. That's great to hear. Well, look, I want to get into AI.
Yes.
But before we do, I just want to kind of go a bit bigger picture.
Okay.
And I've got two quotes. So I was thinking about preparing for this discussion with you, and I've got two quotes. And the first quote is from the legend that is Tony Robbins, who you'll know. Maybe not love. Some people, he's a bit Marmite for some people, but the guy's got
some good stuff.
He's got some great stuff. And his quote was, he says, bias towards thinking, never leave the scene of a decision without taking action. And that's what I noticed from you, Matt. When you left the room after we'd been together, you didn't kind of take this view of, I'll do this I'll get to this next week. You just leant straight into action. Where does that come from? So
it's actually when I was an intern it was GE in their healthcare division. So this is going back to when I was at university, and it was something he was my first, I say proper boss. I'd worked at cafes and things like that, but first boss in the business world. He always said to me, it was a phrase, don't put off till tomorrow what can be done today. And I don't know why, it just always stuck with me, because I thought everything moves really quickly in what we do. And if you waste time taking action, that can have a huge impact. And I just think I've always been a bit of a throw myself into it person. I mean, if you go back to my school reports when I was a kid, it was, Matt's, he's really, really eager, but sometimes he jumps in a bit too quick. And that has been to my detriment as well. But I think I try and use that in what I do now, because I want things to move quickly. And I think the quicker you can move on things, but doing it in the right measured way, the quicker you're going to get results. And I think when you're in sales, it is fast paced. Like you said earlier, you have to adapt a lot. And I think a key trait of sales leaders and salespeople should be accountability. Like if you've said you're going to do something, do it. Don't wait to do it, because something else will come up the next day that distracts you from doing it. And all of a sudden it's been 2 days, 3 days, a week. And then it will become something that is on your list but isn't important anymore. So I'm a big believer in moving things along. And it's always, I guess, kind of been in my nature.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great skill just to have in life in general, right? Because it's not just it's not that just like we forget. It's the energy changes, doesn't it?
Definitely.
And like I wake up some days and through no kind of fault of my own, or sometimes through fault of my own, because of what I've been doing the night before. But I just don't have that energy that day, and that's the most impressive thing that I've seen from you.
Appreciate that.
And it's rare, right? So you get a group of 10, 20 people in a room, and they're all kind of like, I'm going to do this. Yeah. I'm going to make the change. I'm going to do something differently, which we all know is hard. What percentage of those people actually go on to do that? Yeah. But what did you, so moving on to kind of account management, partnership, and the mindset around that, what's your approach to, let's talk about vision first. Okay, so what's the vision that Matt Pennell has? If I gave you an account, and let's actually probably ditch the word account, an actual end customer. Let's go with that. A bunch of human beings trying to do something special. What would be your vision before we get onto practical actions?
For me, I always look at what we're good at, what that customer does, and how we can help them, right? So I think you have to be a bit bold. Even if you don't work with them at that point, you have a vision and go, I want to be their go-to partner for XYZ, right? In our world now, I would want to be their partner for their Microsoft estate, hold their entire network, wrap a managed service around it, and do their collaboration spaces and cybersecurity. So, because that's where we're good. We're not good at everything, but that's where we really excel. So having that vision of wanting to be that top partner, you look at that and you go, right, how do I get there? What are the day-to-day actions that are going to get me there? Who are the people I need to engage? How do I need to engage them? What research do I need to do to put myself a step ahead? And I think by having that vision and constantly pushing towards it, that should inform everything you do about targeting that account, reacting, speaking, the conversations you have. And it's not just going to happen, right? Like we said, you put that vision there and you have to make it happen. But having it there gives you something to focus and work towards. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's almost like what I call it is it's a level of delusion.
Yeah.
That where we are right now, and I think back to all the sales situations that I've been in over the years, the prospect that we're going to win all of the networking and the wrap of the managed service around it, when the situation we're nowhere near that. Yeah. How do you maintain that level of kind of almost delusional level of, Tony Robbins actually would call that belief in potential on his success cycle, right?
So I think you have to constantly qualify, requalify, make sure that you are seeing the potential, because I think it's important to have a vision for an account, but it has to be the right one to go after. And what do I mean by that? Because you could say, I have this vision that I want to do all their Microsoft, all their Cisco, all their networking, not knowing anything about that account. But as you start to prospect, as you start to have conversations, you might very quickly realize that they might not be the right fit for us for X, Y, Z reason. So qualify, requalify. Now, if you are qualifying and you can still see that actually we are a really good fit for them, that should give you the belief that, they might be working with someone doing a good job, but there's always someone who can come along and do a better job. And it's about finding the problem, finding the right people who can help influence, challenge, and get that foot in the door. And that's all it takes is a foot in the door. It might be one small thing that you start with, and then you show your value and our tagline at Cisilion is go beyond expectations. So if they give you something small, treat it like it's the most important thing in the world. Make them feel that personalized service. And then you can keep going towards that vision, because it can be deflating sometimes, and But I think you've just constantly got to be disciplined. You said it earlier, right? Sometimes you wake up and you don't have the energy or the motivation. I think it's impossible for anybody to be motivated 100% of the time.
I agree.
But you have to stay disciplined. And I think that's a much more important, I guess, practice than motivation. Stay disciplined, show up day in, day out, even when you don't want to or feel like doing it. And I always say to my guys, that one action could change your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You either don't do it, that's the only chance it's not going to happen, or you do it.
Yeah.
And then you potentially have the opportunity to do things you weren't going to do. So that's probably how I'd stay focused on it. It's a mixture of things, but you have to have it.
Yeah.
And then qualify out if you know it's not right for you when you've got further in.
Yeah. The two things you've said really resonate. A qualification, I for sure. And look, your prospective customer is qualifying you.
Absolutely.
And your company. You know, it's, to use the cliche term, it's not their first rodeo.
No.
And I remember that the first session that we had together, we met talking about all this stuff was, well, qualification. I think in the sales profession, we think about, it's us qualifying the customer. And there's a level of that, of course. You don't want to stay in a process or expend energy when it's never going to happen, right? So there needs to be some realism. But also, really good qualification should be a consultative process, right? Yeah. Where the customer, you're building trust with the customer through the kind of questions you're asking them, where your focus is, and that. How else do you build trust in the early sales stage engagement if qualification isn't a two-way thing almost?
Absolutely. And this is where I think you probably had the biggest impact on my career from an early stage, was that qualification piece. Being open, I used to just think, I'm pretty good at this. I can talk to people. And I think when we started doing the coaching sessions, the enablement, I kind of very quickly realized that sales was a skill. It was not something that you could just rely on your ability to talk to people and get on with people. And I think your training came at a really crossroads moment for me in my career, where I'd had an exceptional first 3-4 years in sales, was doing really well, and I got a bit complacent. And
sure,
I had all these deals, I had all this pipeline, and in my head I was spending my commission before they'd even come in, because I was like, they'll come in, they always do.
Yeah.
And I think I realized very quickly when they started dropping out of the pipeline that if I'd just asked a few questions, they would have trusted me more. I would have very quickly been able to qualify the risks and handled those early, and even not spent so much time or found new opportunities, new accounts. So qualification is the most important part of what we do, whether that's on an account-based level, whether it's on a opportunity level, or whether it's actually, are we the right fit for this customer? Because it's just as important to walk away as it is to chase. Yeah.
And that brings you kind of onto the next part of qualification, which is multifaceted for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations. And one of those uncomfortable conversations might need to be internal as well. Yeah. And we might have to say to the customer, we don't think we're necessarily the right fit for you. And I've had instances where, particularly in the outsourcing world, where the customer or your prospective customer would assume that you had a level of capability in a certain area, and you were kind of sat there thinking,
maybe not.
Maybe we don't, and that's buzzing through your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when's the right time to be vocal about that? It's probably there and then.
Yeah.
And and I got better at having the uncomfortable conversation much, much earlier in the process. Yeah. That's that whole thing about, if you're going to get to a red light, let's get there as quickly as possible. But what I also had, and I want to get your take on this, is I've had countless times where the customer said, thanks for raising that, Ben. We may be able to work around that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when you know.
Yeah.
They're looking to keep this thing on track.
Yeah.
So honesty, way more often than not, just being honest in the moment is the best policy.
But, it's what I say to all my teams, right? Okay, you might be able to wing it, but that will show. And eventually you will drop the ball on something that you know you're not good at.
Yeah.
So customers will respect you and trust you. And it's much better for long-term relationships if you just say to them, do you know what? That's not what we're good at. We're really good at these core areas. We can do that, but I'm not confident we can do the best job for you. Because if you do that and do it wrong and say you can do it well, guess what? Next time they need something you actually need, or really good at, they're not going to believe you. They'll say, well, you said that last time, and you've eroded every bit of confidence or trust in that partnership. I'm a big believer that everything has to be medium to long term. There will be some short tactical things you do, but if every decision you make is short term to go, right, well, I can win that and I can make some money and put some money on the board. Okay, you might have won a small section, but that kind of, bigger picture piece is gone out the window. So you have to be honest with customers. They see it. People buy from people. Authenticity is key nowadays. In a world where we'll talk about it, where AI can make everybody sound the same, there's some incredible stuff to it, but you have to be authentic and be honest, and that's how you build relationships.
Yeah. And look, if we kind of segue, that's a really good time to segue into AI.
Yeah.
Because who's the big expert on the supply vendor side?
Yep.
Who's the really great expert on AI right now? I mean,
everyone likes to pretend they are, but I don't think anyone quite knows what it is. But
maybe you did last Thursday.
Yeah. And then it's changed.
What are we on now? Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Guess what? You're no longer the edge expert on AI. How can you be? So the need to be what you said about kind of having this direct conversation, saying when you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't know, but shall we go find that out together?
Yeah.
That's what it makes me think more. This is always important, but in sales now, to have that vision of let's co-create together, particularly as the world's changing really fast. Why don't we get your smart people and our smart people in a room together and see how that goes for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on something that I quite liked how you framed there, which was around let's find out together. And I think those partnerships, that's what customers want. They're not expecting you to know absolutely everything, but if you can help them get to the answer, that's so invaluable, right? And that's where I think we can play quite nicely. And I think for me, AI, look, I don't ever pretend, like you said, an expert, right? There's so much I need to learn. And by the time I've learned it, there's something new to learn as well. And, but I see AI in a few different ways, and it's how it can impact a customer technically, but how it can support you as a salesperson in your role to be better and provide a better service. And I think, whether it's cybersecurity, AI-powered networks, the data behind it, the compute to power it, the co-location to get the energy, there's so much opportunity for salespeople to help customers in their AI journey. But I think for me, I'm just trying to get into how it can help me do my job better as well. And I think there's so much potential there for how that can happen. Yeah,
definitely. And I want to definitely capture today the AI tools that you're using, and maybe we can, because that's changing. It's
Absolutely.
changing. But before we get into that, there's another piece here that I think always was important. There's a new category of always was important, now absolutely critical if you want to build a trusted partnership with an end customer. And that's understanding the business outcomes that they need to achieve.
Absolutely.
And we don't show up talking about the technology and our solution until the customer knows that we've kind of researched them, we understand the outcomes that they need to deliver. Because there was always this issue of customers kind of buying technology that didn't solve the outcome. Well, I can see this world, and one of the reasons I started this podcast is I can see this where the world's going, and there's going to be some very public, big problem programs related to customers now introducing this super powerful AI to automate something that wasn't quite what they needed, or
spent millions on it.
We let loose an AI, and now I did an episode on oversharing with Copilot and all that. What's your view on and how are you coaching around understanding the outcome the customer needs? Just be led back, to start top down.
So, I think if you're talking to a customer, I think the first thing you need to do is ask questions that help identify a problem, right? Because if a customer comes to you and they have a bill of materials ready, you're already too late, and you just become transactional. You're not adding any value. It's just okay, give us a price and go. And you don't want to be in that position. But I think it's really important to understand, firstly, how a customer actually makes money. Because I learned this from you, but people are going to buy if they've got a pain or if they have a gain. Right. And understanding how they make money, that's kind of like, well, are they losing money, or can what I'm about to talk to them about help save them money? So understand the challenges they're going to have internally, the problems they've got, how they specifically are a problem, what the consequence of the problem is. By understanding that, you can take that away and talk to them about how your solution is going to help them overcome that problem and what it is going to deliver back. Because if you take something to them and go, oh, please buy these 20 switches, why? But if you say, this is going to give you an ROI of X, Y, Z, this is going to keep you way better connected, this is going to improve resiliency, cyber, something like that, that's more important. Now, when you're cold calling as well, people want to know that you've done something for people in similar situations to them. So using that referenceability, talking about what you've delivered. We do quite a lot around Microsoft Azure and optimization, saving customers between 30 and 50% on their Azure spend by looking at FinOps and delivering a FinOps as a service model, which is quite unique in how we do it. But all of a sudden customers are okay, that is interesting because I don't know what I'm spending. I haven't looked at that in that kind of detail. Can you help me? And I think having that outcome is way more beneficial because they know you can do it, right? And you're not just, anyone can get a quote for something once it's already done. But having the outcome helps them justify the business case.
Yeah, that's critical again, isn't it? To not being in that position that you just outlined, which is, hey, I'm 80% of the way there. I've made my decision and now it's best price wins. And I don't blame them. If I've been on the customer side, that's exactly how you 100%. Act with the people. If the transaction is about fulfillment, then expect to be best price wins.
Absolutely. And I always say with that as well, and it's, if a customer comes to you at the end of a process and they go to 3 people, they're negotiating with the 5% of that, that deal. So 1 or 2% in it is what it is. But if they trust you and you've been there from the start, you've helped them shape it, you've helped them get to that outcome and how it's going to help them, then again, between you, the customer and the vendor as a 3, you can get them a better deal. You can do that. So, but you need to earn the right to be that partner that they come to early in the stage and help them together find out the answer. But 100%.
Yeah. And look, you just mentioned the vendor being in this as well. And we've all lived in a world of vendor, channel,
Yep.
outsource, and I've been in outsourcers where you own technology and then you've got all of those different dynamics. Everybody wants to be leading the conversation.
They do. Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yep.
But from the customer's point of view, and the really good, experienced end customers that I've dealt with, just brilliant at this, and just managing this group of partners.
Yep.
And that, I call it the partner ecosystem,
Yep.
which may include your competitor. Mm-hmm. And that's always, that's always can be uncomfortable for certain management, for sure. But it may include your competitor. It's going to include vendors. But that get in the room and co-create, that can't always just be you with the end customer. What's your experience on that? And then particularly with AI coming.
Yeah. So I'd say for me, the strongest partnerships are when there is a three and you're all pushing towards the right thing, because, we say here, we need to treat vendors as importantly as we do our customers. Right. And I think if you're trying to keep a vendor at arm's length, they're not going to trust what you're doing as well. So I think the earlier that you can engage everybody, be aligned on the problems, the outcomes you're trying to solve together. And I think, again, qualifying that, are they the right partner? Are they the right vendor as well? I just think it's a much stronger unit. And we as the partner aren't going to know all the answers. There'll be areas or topics that the vendor might know better. And I think it's important to engage them early and also get the customer on board, because that's when it's not going to be taken out to 3 random quotes at the end, because the customer sees the value in what you're delivering. And as a partnership, you've got them the commercial level that they're comfortable with and see value on the ROI with. So I think that's really important. I think from an AI perspective coming up, it's probably more important than ever, because everybody's often doing this for the first time. Yeah. Whether it's customers looking at AI for the first time, whether it's some of the AI capabilities being delivered for the first time. If you've just got a disjointed, ecosystem, that's going to cause issues. And I think we need to highlight issues, qualify, re-qualify, and get people involved, and let's do this together. Yeah. And that's how you're going to stop those kind of big problems that you mentioned happening, where someone just sells AI for the sake of it, and then they realize quite quickly it's the wrong technology or solution. Yeah. I think that's how we do it.
Yeah. And that makes me think of another dynamic of strategic partnership and being a really useful partner. And that's being almost helping be the glue in that ecosystem of partners with customer, but also helping your end customer get the right buy-in on their side.
Absolutely.
And every workshop that I've run for customers with vendors and different partners where I've been facilitating, I think it's a 100% hit rate on this piece of feedback, which is the end customer, whether a bank or an automotive, whatever, a public sector, will approach me during the workshop or at the end and say, Ben, do you know what? One of the most useful things about that workshop was it got my team on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's always been, as a sales professional, that's always been music to my ears. Yes. And so many in sales just don't see that role for themselves.
And I think that's really you have to internally be aligned. And I think if you flip it to the customer side of things, every single person, it's not one person that makes a decision, right? There's always multiple people, and every single person has a different objective, different views, different ways of doing things, and different levels of influence. So trying to get them aligned is really key. I've seen so many salespeople, we're all guilty of it at times. You get a good relationship with someone and you pin all your hopes on them.
Right.
And you feel like you're getting the right messages across, but you're not sure that they might not be relaying those messages or the value to the right people in the right way. So I think multi-channeling and multi-threading is really key, and getting everybody aligned, whether it's internally on your side or internally at a customer, is so important nowadays.
Yeah. And look, with AI, lines of business, again, it was always important to talk to people in the lines of business. Again, another kind of like in the technology sales sector, that's kind of like a catch-all for someone who's not the infrastructure guy. Seemingly. But lines of business, people who actually own the teams who are going to be affected by AI to make them more productive, hopefully in their job roles, or perhaps not so many of them are going to be there anymore.
Absolutely.
Those people that own that within a customer organization, without them on board, this is not going to, be a technology purchase.
No.
So what's your experience of actually having those conversations outside of a customer's technology department?
So I think it's about, look, there's always going to be that fear that AI takes your job. So you're going to get pushback from people. But I think it's about reframing it as, it's not going to take your job. It's going to change your job or give you way more time back to be more proactive. And you have to be really careful about talking to that person, because if you go in and start pitching an outcome to somebody that, a lot of what they do is going to be replaced by AI, they're going to sit there and go, well, I'm not going to champion you. I'm not going to do that. Absolutely not. And, I've had one recently. We've just sold it's like a contact center with a big AI piece around AI-powered agents.
Yes.
Right? So they can take a lot of that first line away. But then it's not about saying, right, well, this is going to remove all of your agents. It's like, okay, well, this will allow your agents to become or to focus on things that are going to drive customer success better. Yeah. It's going to make sure that if particular agents are having tough day with lots of negative feedback, really difficult calls, you can take them out of the firing line. So it's going to improve your employee retention, because people are going to be happier. They're going to have a better manage of workload and things like that. So I think you have to shine a light on the positive outcomes and how it could positively impact their role, rather than that fear factor of, well, yeah, of course you can cut costs, but why don't you retrain people and use them in things that are going to actually drive revenue for the business? Yeah. I think that's how you frame it and get those people on board. Yeah,
and it should be like, if you're having a conversation with someone in the customer's technology organization, they say, oh, hey, Matt, yeah, we're kind of interested in automating customer services or bringing these AI agents in. Yeah. Can you help?
Yeah,
that's the time. That's the moment where a light bulb shall come up in one's mind and say, "That's great. Can we both go and speak to the head of customer services and see what she needs in terms of outcomes? And maybe I could come sit in the contact center or remotely listen to a call." And
absolutely,
and as you said, because you're able to start saying, because the calls are quite difficult, it's putting a lot of pressure on people, it's particularly first line where there's an issue. Yeah. But without that conversation with the line of business owner, you're just not going to know the kind of intimate details of what's going on. Yeah,
absolutely. How do they operate?
Services.
And I think, don't assume, and it was, to be fair, that was something that I remember you speaking about years ago, was how you went and interviewed an airline's passengers to be able to submit, it just made me think, well, how do you go think outside the box? How do you go beyond expectations? And on that particular project that I was just talking about, we called into the contact center to understand that kind of process and see if there was anything, because we're talking about things, but once you've experienced it, it's very different. It's way more powerful when you do it. And it goes back to being prepared and showing your research. So things like that make a big difference.
Yeah, totally. And we're already seeing the first instances of customers like Klarna.
Yeah.
So I did one of my first podcast episodes when I was just like researching AI for my own understanding, because I thought I don't know enough about the enterprise use of AI. And customer services is like number one to bring AI in to enhance customer service delivery. It makes perfect sense. And at the time, Klarna said, well, we're going to cut our customer services heads. We don't need so many resources there anymore. We're going to automate them out.
Yeah.
And I just saw last week, and I need to dig into the detail because I'll report on it, Klarna was rehiring a whole bunch of customer services
100%.
agents. And I think that's probably where this thing is going, is that the mythical, we're going to just eliminate all these job roles. It's so hard. It's so difficult to do that because, not least because even before the advent of AI, I mean, I'm 2 years' time, I'll be 30 years into technology and outsourcing sales, which is scary in itself. But at no time during that 30 years have customers not been trying to eliminate waste in their processes, right? It's not a new thing. It just happens to be that there's a new kid on the block in terms of AI as an enabler.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably a really good example of people who've jumped in too quickly, right? In my view, you still can't remove that human interaction. And I think that's what people still want. Now, there are absolutely processes and tasks that can be replaced by AI. But you know how it is. You talk to somebody, AI is only as good as the data it's got. Yeah. Whereas a human can still get that emotive side, that kind of interaction. So I think that for me is where the focus needs to be. And it's key that we do that.
Yeah. I mean, AI is being shown to be demonstrably good on empathy. So if you look in the healthcare world, for example, they did this study. I can't remember the exact details, but what it was, a whole bunch of actual real patients were messaging either with an actual human doctor or an AI agent. And they didn't know which was which. And the feedback is that the patients preferred the AI.
It's phenomenal, isn't it?
And
it's terrifying as well.
It's kind of terrifying. But as you said before, it's important to look at the detail. And so what was the perception? The perception was that AI is more empathetic.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can it be? And then it's like, well, why is the AI more empathetic? It's giving me longer, more detailed answers. And the doctor, it's not that the doctor doesn't want to give the long, detailed answer, but they're busy.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not like they're bad.
Quick.
Not bad doctors.
Whereas AI isn't busy.
AI can just,
can just do it, right?
Just scales and no problem with that. But the human's going to have to stay in the loop because businesses are complex.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is, hey, a startup can now start up with 50% less resources. And I'm like, yeah, but that's because it's way more simple. Yeah. And you're just introducing process as you need to. And hey, it's so much easier to automate. We're in the City of London right now. We're surrounded by big businesses. Yeah, it's not going to be that easy to just pick out a single business process that this human over here does and go, right, let's automate that and then they can leave the building. Yeah. Because that human does lots of different processes.
And they all intertwine and it's connected and that impacts that. It's a much bigger job to do. 100%.
Yeah. So what's the role of AI? I don't know. Maybe it made us just way more productive and it made it in customer services. We sold more.
Yep.
I had a video from Lufthansa talking about how they're managing a phenomenal volume of customer services calls, right? And no one likes, like, when have you ever rung up an airline when you were happy? It's just
you just don't.
You're either not happy about something, something's gone wrong, or
that's just general for customer service, isn't it?
But, exactly. Or you're just freaking out because you need to switch your flight because something's come up. And Lufthansa introduced AI agents that were actually taking just such a huge workload and actually not necessarily upselling, but managing to automate switching people's flights. Yeah. And that that's impressive.
That is really impressive.
But you've got to have a superb customer services team.
Absolutely.
To manage that.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think things like that, like there are so many incredible use cases like that. And I think just being able to speed up those mundane jobs that people don't want to be doing as well, I think it's so powerful, right? And I think in every single business, you will be able to find those and pick them up. But I mean, customer success is the easy one. But, you know, things like, even on a personal level, doing your taxes, filling out your forms, things like that, stuff that people hate doing, giving them time back to spend on things that they love doing. I think that's important. And you can translate that in personal life or in business. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
But I still feel like I'm behind the curve, to be honest. I feel like there are so many things that I could be doing. Even this morning, it was like, well, we were looking at how we can improve our onboarding process. And I was like, okay, well, I'll put together a few questions for, you know, to make sure that people have actually read the content and done that. Someone, well, why don't you just put it through Copilot? Yeah, okay, I could do that. You kind of forget it's there to help you.
Yes.
But it's as we progress, we will find more and more things that it can help us with. And it will get better day after day, week after week, month after month at delivering those things in a more impactful way. So it's exciting. It really is.
Yeah, it's moving fast. I think everybody's seeing the benefit, and anybody, I mean, I can't believe anyone watching this conversation is not already using AI. I mean, if you're not,
in some way, shape, or form,
just
they will be.
Please get ChatGPT. And it hit home a few weeks ago how much I use ChatGPT just for general stuff. Like, I wouldn't put my commercials in it, and I wouldn't put my proprietary information into it, for example, but just for general, just day to day, just kind of helping me get more productive and faster. And I went to Hong Kong and I opened my laptop. First thing is, right, I need to do a bunch of stuff, and where's ChatGPT? Well, it doesn't work there. You don't have access to ChatGPT.
And then you're back to basics.
And then you're back to basics. And that was the first time I was like,
you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Yeah, it wasn't there. And all of a sudden, it's almost like it was making such a difference just on day-to-day stuff.
Definitely.
Chores. And so I kind of thought about it and thought, DeepSeek.
Yeah.
And when I heard about the DeepSeek launch, however many, 2-3 months ago, which crashed $600 million off NVIDIA or whatever. And so I just uploaded DeepSeek on my web browser. Works perfectly because it's coming out of China.
There you go. So it's just learning about what there is out there. And I think there's definitely a race at the moment, isn't it, to be that kind of top, well, that go-to. I think ChatGPT was the first from a commercial perspective, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that's what everybody knows. But there's some great stuff coming out for sure.
Yeah, these sort of large foundation models kind of run away with it. They're getting all the attention, and that's what we're using, isn't it? That's powering the large language models. And that, for me, that's one element of this, but that's not how enterprise can't just take Google Gemini and just start using it in their enterprise. They need to be careful. They need to set up guardrails. There's lots of privacy issues. There's lots of compliance issues. And again, when was it not important to understand your end customer's regulatory environment? It's always been important. Absolutely. But now all these things have gone from always being important to now if you're in a sales role, now you really do need you have to understand this. What's your perspective on that, and how do you help your team with building that knowledge? So
typically years ago, you'd have to go off and do all the research yourself. And that is actually something that AI can massively help with. Yeah. So I've noticed that, even just take it as reading an annual report. For me, that was a standard. You must read an annual report of your top pursuit accounts, because that gives you information on what they're trying to achieve, what they're doing, where they're at, key projects, key challenges. Now you can get things like ChatGPT, Copilot to summarize it with the key points from that. And you can do the same with the regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
Read the regulations, because let's be honest, you have to sit through hundreds of pages of work. And as somebody who's not technical, like a lot of salespeople probably aren't, it might not all resonate. But having things like AI to be able to take 5 hours worth of reading and condense it into 20 or 30 key points, that's really powerful. So that's something that we do a lot of now. But I think, look, we do a lot of work with finance, legal, insurance, heavily regulated industries, as well as a couple in public sector like healthcare and local gov. So you have to be on top of that, because if a customer gets any inkling that you don't really know what you're doing or why they need to do it or the importance of the compliance element, they're not going to trust you. So it's being a salesperson now, you almost have to see yourself as that extension of their team. And their team will know all of that. So that means you have to as well. So I have to make sure that my guys are up to speed on that. We've got a lot of really intelligent internal people that look at the verticals. They talk to the vendors. You rely on the vendors as well. What are you doing in that space at the moment that helps the customer with that regulation? What are the key outcomes that you can provide? So I think it's a mixture of learning from vendors, doing your own research, using AI to make yourself more productive and condense some of that. But I think you can't be a successful salesperson if you're not interested in understanding about how you can help your customers and the pressures that they're under. And regulations change a lot. They're updated, new ones come in. Some are more relevant than others, but you have to understand how you can help a customer and be relevant. Otherwise, you're just another one of 100 people calling a day that don't understand them. And they're not going to pick up the phone to you. They're not going to give you that time. So, just go beyond any expectations and learn. That's what I'd say. And I never used to be good at learning years ago. I thought I was done with learning when I finished school, but I actually realized, and once you can see the impact it has, it does make you a more curious person for sure. So it's important.
And look, when do you ever kind of arrive at the destination? You don't.
No.
Because the world changes, right? And you mentioned the word pressure, and that brings me to my second quote that I want to share with you today.
Oh, seamless.
Exactly. Trying my best. So this is from Dr. Peter Marshall, 1902 to 1949, who was the chaplain of the US Congress. Peter Marshall said, "When we long for life without difficulties, remind us that oaks grow strong in contrary winds and diamonds are made under pressure." And that diamonds are made under pressure, it's in sense. The difficult moments. It's the hard moments. It's that's when people are either forced to change late or they recognize the need to change. What's your perspective on that quote?
100%. I think the best things happen when you get out of your comfort zone. And I think we've probably all been guilty of getting a bit comfortable at times. And sometimes that comfort or lack of pressure, there's always pressure in sales, but that can make you get complacent. And that's when you are forced to refine yourself, to learn. And unfortunately, sometimes it is the hard things that make you change and have the biggest impact. Like I said, learning about qualification more with you was because I'd started losing a load of deals. And that then made me realize, actually, I need to put the pressure back on and ramp that up. And I think, if everything was easy, people wouldn't grow, quite simply. And like I say, sales is a difficult job. And if everybody did it, everybody would do it if it was easy, because the rewards are handsome. But you have to do the right things. And I think put that pressure on yourself to grow, to learn more, to develop, to learn from situations. Not everything's going to go perfectly all the time, and that's fine. Customers also expect that not everything's going to go perfectly all the time.
Yeah.
But A true partnership is done because they know that when something goes wrong, you're going to react in the right way and you're going to help them. You can be that safety net for them that helps get them out of sticky situations, and goes back to that learn together. Let's get to that outcome together. It's the same. You win together, you lose together. And that's the same with partnerships with customers, with vendors, internally. But I'm a big believer that, the best things happen outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, for sure. And then you kind of have the benefit of hindsight when you've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
And all those things that you judged as bad and as negative, as long as you learned from it and you made the change and you said, hey, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
But so I'm going to change this. I recognize where maybe I went wrong, or maybe you just recognize, well, that was just wasn't meant to be. And that's fine too.
That's a big thing for me, is I'm always accountable for what happens. And a lot of people do like to sometimes look for a reason why it didn't happen for them, or feel sorry for themselves or something. But I just think, look at every situation and look at what you could have done better. And there is generally always something. It could be a question you should have asked earlier. It could be how you handled an engagement, how you responded. Or if you look at yourself and how you could have done better and make sure you grow from that experience, you're only ever going to become a better person, better at your job, and that's only ever going to lead to a better service for your customers.
Yeah.
So you have to look inwardly and make sure you don't make the same mistakes over and over again.
Yeah. And what concerns me, not most, I've got various concerns about the sales industry, because the sales industry has been so good to me.
Yep.
We were talking before this, I didn't even have any A-levels. I didn't have a degree.
Yeah.
And thank God for two things: London and sales. Because without those two things, I'm not sure where this is all going. But what concerns me is a world of doing all of this on Teams. And if I think about where were my learning moments as a sales professional, the hardest ones, but the most important, it wasn't when I was on Teams. No. It was when I was probably getting something wrong, stood at the front of a room like this, or whatever. When I was genuinely felt under pressure. And what's your perspective on that?
For me, look, relationships are everything. And one face-to-face engagement is worth 20 Teams invites, because you are a face at the other side of a screen. It's really easy to shut that screen and forget you're there, but you cannot replace human interaction. So whether that's on the customer level, I think being able to see the whites of somebody's eyes, the body language, the mirroring and all that good stuff, that's how you build relationships, and that's how you build trust, because you are a human in front of them. And that's something AI will not be able to replace, not anytime soon. But I think from a sales perspective, I didn't just turn up on day one of my career and know everything I know now, or, speak the way I speak, or whatever it is. I learned that from being around other people, listening to them, being challenged by them, being put under pressure at times, and getting things wrong in front of people. That's where the best coaching moments happen. And they go, well, you might say something a certain way, go, you should have framed it that way. Think about that. Did you think about this? Or you're on a call and they overhear something and they go, quickly ask that question. And you go, great, cool. And then it leads to something. Yeah. If it's all done on Teams, you can't get that. And don't get me wrong, I think Teams has had some incredible, wins and some use cases that really do help. And I think it's connected the world massively. And obviously COVID accelerated that. And I think it absolutely has its place. Yeah. Right. I think giving people a much better work-life balance has been a game changer. Enabling hybrid work as it probably wasn't before. We would have always gone, 5 days in the office, not a problem. Nowadays, if someone says that, you think, are you mad? What's going on? But I think there's some really powerful, wins from Teams. But you will never replace that face-to-face human interaction. it's why I do this. I love it. That's why I got into sales, so that I could meet people. I could, help solve problems together, build relationships. That's what I'm good at, is people, I think. Anyway, people might not say the same thing, but
I would agree. That's
thank you. I think that's one of my skills. Yours, but I would be very scared of a world on Teams. And I think we spoke about it before, but the biggest adaptation since COVID has been talking to customers and saying, why don't we meet for lunch, for a beer or a coffee or something? And it's, oh, well, I'm not in the office.
Yes.
And then sometimes people, okay, you can get a Teams meeting in, but people will then push things back and back and back, or the amount of meetings on the day that get cancelled because it's a bit miserable out and someone's decided to work from home. That's probably been the biggest challenge I've seen.
Right. Customer behavior change.
Yeah, and also because, you used to be able to call an office and get through to somebody.
Yeah.
Now it's, they're not in. They're working from home.
Yeah.
And then you're in their personal space and you don't have a way of contacting them. So sales has had to adapt. You've had to start using LinkedIn more, social selling. You've had to really learn more about outcomes, the challenges and the problems. And you have to show that you're that salesperson that they should give their time to.
In the reach out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so you can't just rely on picking up the phone. And I still think picking up the phone, by the way, is the most impactful way of prospecting and developing new relationships. That's what I've seen. But it has to be part of a wider strategy with socials, with campaigns, with, the calling following up.
Yeah. Yeah. And
you have to earn that right.
And also in a world, if I think about with my customer hat on, where they're just getting hit up by so many bots.
Yep.
And all the AI agents, I get this all the time because I'm a business owner now. It's just like, stop it. I know there's no human behind this. Well, if someone calls me, then guess what?
You know it is.
At the moment.
Although there are some powerful, I've heard some AI cold calls and
they're getting better, aren't they?
They are getting better, for sure.
Yeah. But then I think, my concern for salespeople is, you need to be out there in front of your customer. Mm-hmm. And I don't think complex kind of consultative selling, I don't think that's getting AI'd out as a job role anytime soon. But I would say to the sales profession, well, don't make it even easier to AI you out of this process if you're never in front of your customer.
Absolutely. I could not agree more.
In person. Yeah, Matt, hi. I'm not coming in till 11 because I'm actually having breakfast with such and such.
Absolutely.
Bank XYZ.
AI can't buy their customers breakfast yet. So,
not quite.
Exactly. So,
and then all your problem is look, just keep the expenses down, right?
Exactly that. But you're right. I think the way I see it is if you are transactional as a partner and you're just responding to quotes, ticking over, you're not taking the time to understand them and actually help them and make them feel like you're involved in their job and they couldn't do their job without you, you can be replaced by AI at times. And I think, put it this way, if you had two people there and the customer had a decision to buy from an AI bot or, and some of that transactional stuff, or somebody that they know about, they know their family life, they know their passions, their interests, that human level becomes a lot more difficult to replace.
Yes.
And I think we have to do our job better than ever now and not be complacent, because very quickly that could start happening. The way I said about research and tools with AI, a customer could probably do something similar, right?
Exactly. They're like, I don't need to speak to the partner anymore. I can just
Google, this is my use case, this is what I want. And all of a sudden, so you need to be doing that extra stuff, going beyond expectations and making sure that they see you as irreplaceable.
Yeah, for sure. And then that loops back to like practical advice for anyone watching this in sales when is the customer going to agree to meet you in person versus jump on Teams?
Yep.
It's only going to be when you're doing something that's related to co-creation.
Yep.
And it's only going to be when the customer wants to share something with you that's sensitive.
Yep.
And if we go back to the scenario that you mentioned, there's what was the stat? 6 to 8 people involved in every decision.
Something like
that's probably going to increase
absolutely
with AI on the customer side. And all the people on the customer side don't assume they all love one another and they all work in harmony and sync up all the time. They don't. They tend to work in their own fiefdoms.
There's politics in every company.
And politics, and you need to understand that politics if you're going to build a strategic relationship with the customer. And then hopefully, and I'm sure you're very good at this, you're the one that helps navigate, find a way through all of that. How do you do that? I think you could probably do that 100% meeting virtually with the customer, but it's going to take you a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What I've found is, so customers will give you their time, right? If you're looking at it from a completely cold perspective, where it's your first opportunity to work with them, you firstly have to earn the right to get their face time. They're giving up their time when they could be doing something else. So you have to find the problem that you're helping them solve, the pain, the gain, whatever it is. Once you've done that and you give them confidence that you can help them with that, you've almost earned the right to do it in person. Now, this is where it goes back to the multi-threading again. And, don't just focus on that one person because their challenges are going to be one thing and this person's will be another. They'll have their own objectives. This will have a politics there. So you almost have to, the way I've always done it, you ask them to champion you around to the different stakeholders and you almost build the business case to them. Look, this is the problem that we're helping you solve, right? This is how I see it at the moment. This is the impact it's having on you. This is where you want to get to. Who else is going to be involved in this decision? What are their challenges? Look, I love the work that we've done together. I think, you've put some really good ideas in my head here. And I want to make sure that we can help you get what you want. So let's have a conversation with all the other stakeholders and then we can make sure that any risks, anything that they want to ask, we can iron that out as well. Yeah. So you almost have to put it in their mind that you're championing them internally as well.
Yes.
And it's a subtle way of doing it because some people do, if you just go over their head and to someone else, that can be a really negative impact because you're pulling the rug from under someone's feet. They might not even have had that conversation yet, which again is is that a red light? Yeah. Is this just something you're running with without knowing that it's an approved project or problem? Because the problem you're having might not actually impact anybody else and then you're not going to get the budget signed off. So you have to do it in the right way. But when you're in person, they're more likely to say things that, are a bit more off the record.
Tell you the truth.
Yeah. They'll be more honest, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's really key as well. So, I think that in person helps, that multi-threading and helping people or making people feel like you're only going to be positive for them and their career as well.
Yes, yeah, it's being helpful, and at no point when you're talking now, it's great to hear. Because at no point are you saying this is wonderful technology, you need this, don't you?
Yeah.
You're talking about how do we get from where we are now? There's some important information that we all need to know as a collective.
Yeah.
And we need to go talk to
absolutely.
This person. And I know that's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And I know you probably don't speak to that person day in, day out.
Yeah.
But would you agree that that's important that happens?
Absolutely.
And that's super consultative and helpful.
Definitely.
And sometimes, as you mentioned, risky, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because people, if they're the ones that you're working with, they need to be confident that you're not going to make them look silly.
Yes.
Because if they put their neck on the line to get you in or push you up the chain or around the chain, you need to give them confidence that you're actually helping them and doing something, and you build that trust, lead with empathy, and that's where the results will come.
Yeah.
I believe.
Okay, look, we're kind of I'm trying to keep an eye on time as well. I wanted to cover another aspect with you today, Matt, and that's the emotional side of this, the staying fit and well along this journey, because that's the other thing in sales is the pressure can really kind of take you quite quickly through to not necessarily burnout, but all of a sudden your focus isn't, or not enough of your focus is on you. And how you're doing and making this sustainable from a kind of like well-being point of view. What's your perspective on that, and how do you kind of support your teams on that?
So for me, sales is up and down, right? You're going to have extreme highs and extreme lows. And I think when in my younger career or early career, I probably let that happen to myself too much because I get so personally invested in the end result of this could I could get this from that, but what if I say this and it ruins my relationship? And I'd always think of the worst or the best case outcome. But emotionally, that was draining, and I really struggled to not take my work home because I was so invested in every deal, every account, what I was doing, that I couldn't switch on or off. And I think over the years, as I've become more experienced, I've realized that maybe those extreme negative outcomes very rarely ever happened. And the extreme positives, well, I could control so much that would help me get there. So I became a lot better. I always say, what can I control? If I can't control it now, I don't worry about it. But I will look at it and go, okay, what can I control? What are the individual actions that I can do right now that will help me get closer to that vision, to that goal, and get that outcome that I want?
Yes.
And if you focus on that, it becomes easier to stay balanced. And I don't always get it right. There's still times where I am emotional about things and I have to pull myself back.
I think that, by the way, I think that's needed.
Yeah.
In this job role, you need a bit of drive.
Yeah. If you're passionate about what you do,
right?
you do get emotional and attached to things still. But look, I've got guys on my team who are I see a lot of similarities in myself with from years back. And I try and take some of the pressure or the sting out of that. And I try and help them focus on what they can do now. And I think that's important. I think for me, I'm a different person now to what I was years ago. I've got a young family, and I think that has definitely helped me with perspective. And I think sometimes you just have to look at things and go, well, actually, all those bad things that I thought were going to happen, that chimp on my back telling me, the chimp, the good old chimp, that paradox. They very rarely happen. So, what's important? I've got an amazing wife, a beautiful young daughter. At the moment, luckily I'm fit, I'm healthy. That's the important things in life. And whilst I'm incredibly passionate about what I do and the service I deliver to my customers, because I think what's the point if you're not passionate about that? I think stay balanced, stay level, take a step back from every deal and say, what would I advise myself to do if I wasn't in this?
Yeah.
And I think looking at it from that mentality has definitely helped me quite a lot. And lean on people as well. You'd be surprised. Everybody, and I've noticed it here at Cisilion, everybody wants to help you. And there are people here, even if you just want to bounce ideas off or use people who've maybe experienced things to just give you that neutral point of view and put you back in check. And I think a lot of people in sales think it's all on them.
That's right.
Not. And I think you have to show up for your team. You have to be available. You have to support them and not criticize for the sake of criticizing. I think people are hard enough on themselves, but show them, lead from the front. Obviously, there's pressure with targets and things like that. There always will be, but try and take that step back and control the controllables.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. You covered a lot there.
Yeah.
And acceptance.
Yeah.
Is really important, isn't it? Yeah. And I never had that. I never accept. Would just some things out completely outside of my control. I'm like, no, I want to control it. But it is that combination of drive, and passion, competitiveness, and wanting to wanting to win, wanting to be successful. And then how do you kind of look after yourself in that? Because if you look at, say, burnout being I feel a certain way. I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling down in the dumps. I'm grumpy around other people, normally one's family,
so much
right?
more, doesn't it?
And that's like, if that's kind of like a software problem, the too much chimp activity going on up here, what I didn't realize was, no, it might be a hardware problem, which is, when was the last time you actually went out for a walk?
Yeah.
When was the last time you went to the gym or swimming pool or tennis or whatever you do?
Yeah.
Diet, we were talking about earlier.
Diet's big as well.
What do you do to kind of look after yourself from a sort of hardware point of view, physical point of view?
So for me, I always try and do my 10,000 steps a day.
Yeah.
Like that gives me something to work towards on myself each day. I mean, to be honest, it just means I can eat a bit more food because I've burnt the calories as well. So I love my food. But I do that. I try and go to the gym at least 4 or 5 times a week.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
I try, and staying fit and healthy has the biggest impact on my general mental health. Yes. Because I think if you feel good, if you look good, that allows you to be in the right mind space for work and family life. Because, I used to balloon and then shrink. I was always extremes. It was 100%, and I'd eat well, I'd be running non-stop, I'd be gymming non-stop, and I'd lose a couple of stone. Great. And then I'd go, right, I've done it now. Yeah. And then I put it all back on again, and every single year I'd yo. Exactly that. I think, I've got the space to do that now. And, again, it's only the last couple of years that I've put more focus on my physical fitness because I also want to set a good example to my daughter. If she sees the good habits that I'm in, I think she'll grow up knowing how important it is to stay fit and healthy. And I think that's probably changed the way I look at things. And it has had an impact on my work, professional life too. Yeah.
It's foundational for just everything, right?
Habits.
And back to what you said at the start of this podcast.
Yeah.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Discipline and consistency. Yeah. And the bit I would say to caveat all of this is I love the expression 1,000 new beginnings.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Yes, it's going to slip.
Yeah.
Like you said, I would lose 2 stone and it'd be like, buffed up and all the rest of it. And then 6 months later, I'm back again. But you're probably catching it a lot earlier, but measuring, like this Garmin thing's measuring everything, right? Yeah. And which it is super helpful. But I love that 1,000 new beginnings. I got that from when I learned meditation practice, which means it's always, don't worry, you're human, it's going to slip, but you recognize it early and you go, no, we need to get back on. Yeah. We need to get back on the process, don't we?
I think since social media's come along, everybody just sees what people want them to see. And I think it's really easy to criticize yourself for slipping. Right. Because you look at everyone else and everything's perfect. They're not showing you the struggle, the hardship that they've gone through to get to that point. It's snippets. And I think it's more important than ever to recognize that it's okay to not be perfect all the time. Nobody is perfect. I don't think there's any salesperson who has ever not missed a target. Yeah. It doesn't define who you are, but it's the reaction to that helps you. And I think that's really key in the world we're in at the moment.
Yeah. And look, in sales, and look, we'll wrap up because we're over time, I think. In sales, what I always used to think was when you win, then everyone gives you the round of applause.
Yep.
In some cases, an award, like a glass award thing. Very nice. And you get a nice little thing on the email around the company that how well you did, pat on the back, great, celebrating. And I got to a place with that where I was like, I'm grateful for it. That's great. But I was like, no, where was the celebrating the moment that everyone else had given up and I kept going?
Yeah.
And the February morning when we had that terrible meeting and we got it all wrong, we were all kind of like head in hands. but and everyone was saying this ain't going to happen, guys. You do realize it internally, but no, we kept going.
Yeah.
And that piece, I want to get your perspective on that, and we'll wrap up.
I always say, look, there's a lot of people that I've managed over the years where, that first 6 months or year of their career, it's almost like that. I don't know if you've seen that picture of, the two miners. There's one mining towards something and then one heading back. And it's almost like all the diamonds are just kind of the other side of it. And it's like, look, things aren't going to go perfectly, then they're not going to do that. But it's the people that push beyond that, stay consistent, stay disciplined. They're the ones that will get the rewards ultimately.
Yeah.
And it's something about, again, I think I mentioned to you before, but I've never been good at reading long books and things like that. So listening to audio books. And there was one that I listened to, and I can't remember the name, but I took the snippet from it, but it was around shifting the way you look at things, changing your paradigm.
Sure.
And you could look at a situation and go, I'm going to feel so sorry for myself. Everything's gone against me, this excuse, that excuse. And how is that going to help you? It's not. It's going to make things worse. Yeah. Or you can look at it and go, right, what is the best that I could make of this situation if I just change how I approach it? And that is going to help you. And the only way you will absolutely not be successful is if you don't take action. So give it a go, right? And something good could come of it. So having that mentality really helps. And I think, there will be times where you do feel down in the dumps. No one's immune from that, but react to it. Make a change. Do something that's going to help you get out of that hole, or and you never know what will happen. I've seen so many great success stories of people that did do that. So focus on that.
Yeah, all about taking action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Matt Pennell, been a pleasure.
Let's
wrap it up there for this instalment.
There we go. No, it's been good to see you again, Ben. Thank you very much.
You too, Matt. Thanks very much. See you again soon, yeah?
See you soon.
Cheers.